Cool. Ready when you are.
I'm ready.
All right. What's going on there, everybody? Welcome to another episode of In the Pocket Podcast. I am your host, SOU to the P, joined as always by my good brother, Mike Williams. What's going on?
Hey man, I'm happy. We're over here. Football season starts today, brother. So this is what we've been waiting for. We've been waiting for I don't know how many days, 100 and something.
Too many.
It feels like a lifetime, but we're back in it today.
Yeah, too many days that we've gone without NFL football. Always feels like this is a part of my life where it's incomplete without something to watch on Sunday. But I will tell you that my mental stability is a lot higher outside of football season. My mental and my emotional capability much higher outside of football season. But yes, we've reached that point in the year where whatever happens on Sunday determines what kind of mood I'm going to be in for the rest of the week. And that won't get corrected until we get a W on the following Sunday. But let's get right into it, Mike, because there's a lot of stuff that happened since we talked. But the big thing that happened, and I think you and I talked about it the last time, that we kind of saw this coming, didn't see the destination. There's massive fumble in Dallas. Micah Parsons, the kid who grew up idolizing the Dallas Cowboys, was his dream to get drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, traded to the Green Bay Packers after what turned out to be like a really, really ugly situation, man. Like, I can't help but feel that Dallas, specifically Jerry Jones, fumbled this moment.
Yeah, no, you don't have to feel like it. They absolutely did. And when we're looking at how they've been negotiating contracts, all this stuff runs together. Joe Burrow had a good point. He said, all the reporters was asking him, well, you guys can't pay everybody. So, well, the Eagles do it. The Eagles pay everybody, right? They had the highest paid offensive lineman, highest paid receiver. They paid Jalen Hurts respectfully. They got the highest paid running back. They got a top 10 paid tight end. But this is the difference: is they pay their players early, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by Dallas waiting, they lost about $10 to $15 million a year from Dak. His contract. He's making 60 at the time they could have signed him. The earliest they could have signed him to about 40-ish, 45-ish million dollars a year. He signed a $60 million a year, right? CD, by them waiting that year, when he's one of your star players, right? He's wearing that 88. They increased that salary by about $5 million a year by waiting, right? Micah Parsons, they could have got him for $35 million an offseason ago or even before that. He was the last real player in his draft class that got signed, which is insane because he's arguably one of the best, right? They could have probably got him for $35 million. He signed a $47 million a year deal, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking close to $20 million a year that they could have used. That's several starters, right, on the team. That's defensive reinforcements, like defensive tackle, like Jerry Jones is so concerned about, etc. And then the fact that he's not even in his prime yet. Going into his fifth year, he's on an upward trajectory, and they only got 2 picks in Kenny Clark. Now, Kenny Clark is a phenomenal run stopper, Pro Bowler, etc., but he's coming off of injuries and he turns 30. So you're trading somebody on the upswing, one of the top 5 defensive players in the NFL, unarguably, right? For 2 first-round picks that are going to be low first-round picks, most likely, right?
Yeah.
Really high seconds, whatever. The only benefit of those picks is that you get the 5th-year option, right? But that was a generational fumble for a player that is on track to, besides like TJ Watt, Von Miller, he's in that class. He has the potential to break into that top 10 sack all time, and they just gave him up for Kenny Clark and 2 late first-round picks, which is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, I think the thing that was telling, right, is I remember when Micah came into the league, how much he talked about, growing up being a Dallas fan and how much he had said, he wanted to be a Cowboy for life. But the turning point for me was when he issued that statement. He didn't just say, I want to be traded. He says, I don't want to be a Cowboy anymore. I don't want to wear the star on my helmet anymore. And I think that speaks to, the actual situation, what was happening over there, and the comments that Jerry Jones just haphazardly just says, and he hasn't let up. And the thing I think that's most annoying for me is that post-trade, Dallas is trying to play this off as like, oh, this is what was in the best interest of the team. Like it feels very much like this was the plan all along. No, you guys messed up. Jerry, you backed yourself into a corner where you alienated arguably your best player, if not your second best player on the
Not even
entire
arguably,
team.
he's their best player.
Yeah, on your team. And you put it into a position where you couldn't walk back, where the team that he grew up loving, he was like, I don't want to be a part of the organization anymore. This wasn't a Terry McClory situation where it was like, hey, if you're not going to pay me, trade me.
Right.
Like it got personal with him. And Jerry he's crossed that line several times, and he's been able to walk it back. My hat's off to Micah for being 10 toes on this, because the reports were that Dallas had came to the table with an offer that was, more than what he was getting from the Packers. But the situation and the relationships had deteriorated so far to that point that he was like, no, I don't want to be here. And I'm telling you, as somebody who hates the cold, and you know this, Mike, because I had to leave Colorado and move to Texas to get a
Left me
little bit
over here by
warmer.
myself, man.
For sure. Brother, there's no way you could get me to leave tax-free Texas to go play in cold Wisconsin.
Yeah, like that lets you know, like, again, I think it's a couple things. If Jerry thought that was truly the best decision for the team, I can't argue with that. But then how you executed it, right? Why didn't you trade Micah before the draft, right? Mm-hmm. When you know what players are coming up in the draft, I can trade them to a team maybe with the top 10 pick or whatever the case, maybe that's willing to pay him and get another pick and get a player and probably get more draft compensation. And then you could have drafted a player in this draft that could impact your team this year, right? There was several this past draft, this 25 draft was loaded with D tackles, right? Yep. So if you had a run stopping concern, and they did a good job of drafting some pass rushers, like I think some people do forget about that. So I don't think any of them are going to be on the level of Micah Parsons, but they drafted some players that combined could probably this year potentially, get 12, 14 sacks that Micah put up. But that's from several players. That's not for one person of the defense that's to focus on. So that's one thing, right? The second thing is, if you truly thought it was the best decision for the team, then why did you offer him last minute before you had to trade him an offer that was more than what he got in Green Bay? Because you knew it wasn't what was best for your team, right? At that point, you were just trying to save face. And Jerry Jones lost out on this and fumbled this because of his pride. And I don't think you can do that with players and have a successful season. And as we go through our division predictions, that's going to be reflected. They could have been in a much better situation. There's a world where they could have traded Micah earlier and still been in playoff contention, potentially better their team overall because they made some wise decisions. But how they did that this late in the game, a week before the season started, was absolutely maniacal.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, the biggest loser in this entire situation is Brian Schottenheimer.
Absolutely.
This is your first opportunity of being a head coach. You're already in a team that, with Micah Parsons, is in a questionable position and has a lot of holes, and we're doubting your capability as a head coach. Now you're going into a season without the best player on your team, without that force on defense. Like, Schottenheimer, start getting your application ready, brother, because you're not going to make it.
And if he does, it's going to be because he follows Jerry's rules so well, and not because the season that he could have had.
100%. Well, man, let's get to it. As promised on the last show, we're going to give you guys all of our predictions for how all of these divisions are going to shake out, winners and losers. I'm not giving any kind of specific record predictions, but man, let's go ahead and swing it up north, AFC style. Mike, I'm gonna let you go ahead and start this one. Who is your division winner and who is your division loser?
Yeah, I'm going to start with loser and then go up, right? I'll kind of go fourth to one. So in this division, and I feel like people are going to be like, hey, this is easy pickings, but I'm going to pick the Browns to finish fourth. But here's my caveat. They're only going to finish fourth by like a game or two, right? Because I think they have a phenomenal defense. They have an AFC North type defense. Their offense, we'll have to see. That's kind of the question mark for them. But they do have some pieces that, and a two-time coach of the year, that kind of puts them in a position to be competitive. Third place is going to be the Bengals. And arguably, I would have picked the Bengals to win this division if they addressed their defense. They did not address their defense, right? They did a good job of getting a new defensive coordinator in there who will work with the pieces. Lou Anarumo was a great defensive coordinator too.
Sure.
And the pieces they have a coach who's been coaching in college. He can develop some of these younger guys. They have second place in that division. And the first playoff, the team to make the playoffs, in my opinion, is going to be the Steelers, right? They had a massive overhaul this season, getting Aaron Rodgers in there. A lot of games they lost last year because they were throwing interceptions, having turnovers. If Aaron Rodgers is known for two things, it's being able to throw the ball and not being able to turn the ball over. So I think that in itself will get them to 10 wins, 10, 11 wins, and get them in position to make the playoffs. And then obviously with how the Ravens reloaded, the experience they got last year in those playoffs, I'm picking the Ravens to win the AFC North. And not only that, I think that Lamar Jackson will finish this season top 3 in the MVP voting.
I like that. I pretty much agree with almost everything you said. I will make one slight change. So for my division loser, I have the Bengals as the division loser. I really think their change in defensive coordinator and their lack of aggression during the offseason to address all of their defensive deficiencies is going to be too much overcome in a division that I think everybody else got better. Like, I think everybody else got significantly better. And while I can be happy for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins getting their contract, who's throwing them the ball? I love Joe Burrow. I love him to death. But that offensive line didn't get better. It arguably got worse. And Joe Burrow, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, he's only finished one season healthy.
Yeah.
So I don't have a lot to go on. And there's a lot of tension in Cincinnati right now. Around Zach Taylor, the head coach. Is he coaching his final season with the Cincinnati Bengals? Is he the guy that can get them to the promised land? All that goodwill that he had built up for that Super Bowl appearance and ultimately, Super Bowl loss, I think all of that is long since faded for a team that felt like they were right on the edge. And now, they went from being the cream of the crop, the top of that division to, in my eyes, I think they're at the bottom of the division. I think you brought up some valid concerns when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, right? We don't know what they're doing at the quarterback position, but you know what? I feel like that team top to bottom is a lot more balanced than the Bengals, and they're not so one-sided. And I trust Kevin Stefanski more as a coach than I do Zach Taylor. So that's the only reason why I would flip that. And then obviously I've got Baltimore winning the division there. I just think that the Ravens have too much to overcome. There's too much to overcome for the other teams that are in that division. I think Derrick Henry still has a lot of tread on the tires, a lot of juice in the tank. Lamar has continued to get better every single year. And the wide receiver group is getting healthy. But more importantly, like that defense just keeps getting better and better every single season. And they added a lot of young talent in the draft that I think is ultimately going to make them a lot better. Look for Zay Flowers this year to have a year, but more importantly, I imagine that we'll start seeing DeAndre Hopkins' name a lot more as he's probably going to be working. I would say probably a lot out of the slot.
Absolutely.
Cool. Next on our list, AFC South. I'm gonna go ahead and start this one. Feels like this should be an easy no-brainer, but my loser here in the AFC South is the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know what they've done this offseason. I question any organization that thinks Daniel Jones is a starting quarterback in the NFL. And again, defensively, I just don't know what they're doing. Shane Steichen has proven himself to be a great coordinator. I'm not sold on Shane Steichen, the head coach. And maybe that is because of lack of quarterback options, right? Like we've cycled through a few quarterbacks in the last few years, and they just haven't been able to work. Seems like the Anthony Richardson project is all but over in Indianapolis. I don't know if you could call that a career for him. But I think his time in Indianapolis is done. But the team that I have winning this division is the Houston Texans. I think they took a season last year where they took a step back, marred with injuries across their offensive line and in their receiving weapons, yet they still found a way to get to the playoffs. I think people are coming back considerably a lot healthier, even though it looks like Joe Mixon might miss the entire season. I think Nick Chubb, 1 year removed from that injury, I think is going to return closer to form and help throttle that, power that offense to success and take some of the burden off of CJ Stroud's shoulders. And I think they did do some work to address that offensive line, and the defense remains stout. I love D'Amico Ryans as a head coach. I think he's one of the better defensive head coaches in the league. I trust him to just barely edge out what I think is going to be a really hyper aggressive Tennessee Titans this year.
Yeah, no, I like that, and I'm a little different on it, and I don't want Titans fans to hate me or anything like that. I'm a big Cam Ward fan. I think the Titans could probably win like 6 to 8 games this year, but I think in this division that would be enough to finish last, right? Like I think the Colts could have about that same record, but I think the Titans are going to be last, but they're going to be much improved over last year with the young pieces they brought in, new coordinator, or the coaching staff they have with Brian Callahan, et cetera. I think they'll be good, right? And then I'm going to pick a little bit. Maybe people are going to look at this kind of crazy, but the Jags, right? The Jags invested a lot of pieces on offense and defense. Travis Hunter, et cetera. We're going to see how that's going to work out. I'm just not a big believer in Trevor Lawrence, right? Like he has not shown to be somebody that can get you in a position to win. He's very high risk and reward, right? Like he can throw for 4 touchdowns, but he can also throw for 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and lose you a game in the playoffs like he has before, right? I think the Colts with the competition that they're going to have, I think they'll fare out a little bit better than the Jaguars. They still have DeForest Buckner, they still have Jonathan Taylor, they still have Michael Pittman. They have some pieces on that team, and then they brought in Lou Anarumo from the Bengals, who I think is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, especially for the pieces they have. Now, I don't think that any of those teams I just named will make the playoffs, but I do think the Colts will be much improved just because that coordinator switch that they had on defense, and because they have Jonathan Taylor, they're gonna be a running offense with Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor, and then obviously run away, probably win this division by 3-4 games is the Texans. I love the pieces they have. I agree with everything you said on the head coach, but they got Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter. They have defense that's going to be able to hunt after you. They traded Laramie Tunsil, but then they got in Ursary, who was one of my favorite tackles coming in, and he's going to start right away. And they said he looks phenomenal right away. And I think CJ Stroud in his third year with that team, third year in that offense, is going to take a big jump forward. So I think they're going to be dangerous in the playoffs, and it's going to be a team nobody wants to play. And I think they're the class of that division by a lot.
For sure. All right, man. AFC East time. It's to you.
Yeah, so my loser in this division, sorry, Doug, but it's going to be the Dolphins, right? They have a lot of injuries, right? That's a big thing. They have a lot of injuries. They had a lot of lost players. Mike McDaniels is a phenomenal play caller, but I just don't see how they're going to take forward. And I think he's a great head coach as well, or good head coach at least. I just think it's not always the X's and O's, it's the Jimmys and the Joes, and they don't have the Jimmys and the Joes right now, right? So I'm picking them to finish last. They have not addressed the biggest glaring weakness on their team the last 3 years, which has been their offensive line. I think they've taken some swings, but they haven't found those solutions there. And then you have a quarterback behind that line in Tua Tagovailoa, who has a history of concussions and injuries, and I don't think those two are going to go well together. And Tua hasn't played a whole season healthy. I don't think he's played a whole season healthy, right? He's missed games every single year. So I'm going to pick the Dolphins in last place. And then the rest of the division is going to be very competitive, right? I got the Jets making an improvement. I think if they win the same amount of games they won last year, that 7-8 game range, that's a good season for them with these younger players. Justin Fields, hope he can take a step forward and play. They have Breece Hall, they have Garrett Wilson, they have some pieces on that team. They have a good offensive line. They did just see some injuries on their offensive line as well, which is why they were one of the teams I thought that could have been competing for a playoff spot potentially. But with the injuries that they've had, and again, sometimes you can't do anything about that. I got them finishing third in that division. And then I got the Mike Vrabel-led Patriots, right? And not only because it's Mike Vrabel, but because they got Josh McDaniels coming back. And I think what that's going to do for Drake May's season with Stephon Diggs, Ramondre Stevenson, etc. Like they're a young team, but we know that they're going to be well coached on offense and defense, right? No matter how we feel about Mike McDaniels, or not Mike McDaniels, Josh McDaniels, he can coach the hell out of an offense, right? He's shown that everywhere he's been repeatedly, right? So I think that's going to be a huge jump for Drake May's career. And I think they'll be competing for a playoff spot. I think they'll be one of the most improved teams this year for sure, having with that leadership. And then the Bills, right? I think the Bills will take a little bit of a step back unless their weapons like Keon Coleman, et cetera, take a step forward. They do have some weapons, right? But like Khalil Shakir, et cetera, the 2 tight ends they have, like they and James Cook. So they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. They have a good coach. He's kind of in that Mike Tomlin vein where, like, yeah, he's going to win you these games. Can he lead them to a Super Bowl? We'll have to see if they can get there and how they'll compete when they get there. But I'm picking the Bills to win that division and the Patriots to be competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I think all of that stuff follows sound logic. Last in this division, I had the Miami Dolphins, and I've been on the record on this podcast. I think they're going to be the worst team in football. I just do. I'm not going to spend too much time harping on them. I just think there's dysfunction at every layer of that team. And you have a locker room that doesn't seem to be united. Also with, the Tyreek Hill situation, which continues to be something that's up in the air. Like, he did a lot of damage to his personal brand. And I think the team is aware of that, but it's also like, hey, what are you going to do? He's arguably the best offensive weapon that they have. Like, so you need him, but even then he hasn't been the Tyreek Hill of old, right? Like, he gets banged up down the stretch. I think you nailed it on the head, bro. Like, they just refuse to get the offensive line together. Like, they just refuse to, which I don't understand. You could argue that the most fragile quarterback in the NFL is Tua Tagovailoa.
I don't think you can argue.
Followed by Joe Burrow. Like, those are the two of the most fragile quarterbacks in the NFL. You have to get an offensive line to protect those guys, and both of those teams that we're talking about have failed to address that. So I've got them finishing last in that division. Then, surprise for the winner of that division, just barely, and I have them edging it out by a game. It's going to be the difference in the head-to-head. I have the Mike Vrabel-led Patriots overtaking the Bills this year.
Not happening this year.
I have because I think as terrific as Josh Allen has been, and as many times as he's been able to put that cape on, I think this is the first year that we're going to start to see some of the wear and tear there. I'm not convinced that there is enough there with the rest of that team that they can pull the rest of that team together to alleviate some of the burden off of Josh Allen, and that the onus is still going to be too much on him to win them games. They will win a lot of games. And I think, like I said, they could possibly finish with the same record as the Patriots. But I think the head-to-head, whoever wins the last matchup between those two is what's going to be the deciding factor there. I really, really love this Patriots team. I think Drake May is going to be a phenomenal quarterback. I think having Josh McDaniels back, like, again, whatever you feel about the guy personally or you feel about him as a head coach, he knows how to run an offense. He knows how to do the offensive coordinator. Like, if there was a guy that was born to be an offensive coordinator, it's Josh McDaniels. He knows very, very specifically what to do. There's going to be a level of physicality that has not existed with the Patriots in years under Mike Vrabel. And, Vrabel, because that is the team that he played for, right? Like, he has a lot of pride in coming back and taking care of, very much in the same way that Aaron Glenn feels with the Jets, very much in the same way that D'Amico felt with the Texans. Like, I don't think you can underestimate, like, the value of that. Also, the thing that I don't think is getting talked enough about, like, yes, Drake May is going to be good. Yes, they have some weapons. They got Stephon Diggs, who I think, a year removed from the injury is also going to be good as well. Travion Henderson, look for them to run the ball a lot. Absolutely. I think that offensive line is going to be much, much improved. But Derrick Henry, for the record, before Mike Vrabel was Mike Vrabel comes in and he really helps set Derrick Henry on a great trajectory for his NFL career. I can see the same thing, having really tough physical backs with Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, especially Travion Henderson, who is great catching the ball out of the backfield.
Very fast.
And he's fast and he's twitchy. Yeah, expect this team to go a lot further than what probably most people are expecting. They're going to be going toe-to-toe with the Bills. I like them to just overtake the Bills by half a game.
That's fair. I disagree, but it's fair.
All right. And finally, we have the AFC West. This is This was a hard one for me, man, because I do believe that the AFC West is the most competitive division in football currently.
Absolutely.
They have pretty phenomenal coaches on every single team, proven coaches that have all demonstrated that they have what it takes to get to the big game. And correct me if I'm wrong, all of them have a ring minus Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, that's 100% accurate.
Yeah, all of them have a ring minus Harbaugh, but all of them have been there. Um, so, that being said, it is really hard for me to say this, but because I don't know if I believe it all the way, but I have the Raiders coming in last in that division, but barely coming in last, right behind the Chargers. Like, um, I just, yeah, I think they've done a lot of good things in the offseason. I think Pete Carroll is a really good head coach. I think Gino is a good, not he's a good to great, not special quarterback. I like them getting a running back in Ashton Jindy, them locking up Max Crosby. I think they've done a lot to address all the deficits that they've had on defense. And I think there's been a massive culture shift. So I do expect them to be very, very competitive. I think they're just going to get edged out by the Chargers just because, one, the quality of the roster that the Chargers have is there. And I would say I think Jim Harbaugh is a better coach than Pete Carroll when it comes to his type of football, which is going to be smash mouth physical football. But the Chargers are going to have their own problems. They're losing Rashawn Slater. We saw what that looked like last year, and it's not going to look good this year, even with Amari and Hampton back there. Then I think this is the most up in the air that the winner of that division is going to be. I think it's going to be a tussle between Kansas City and Denver. The only reason why I have Denver coming in second is because Bo Nix is going to be the great unknown here. He is going to be the determining factor. If he can continue on the trajectory that he ended the season with, I think they overtake Kansas City because I really like the pieces on this roster. And I think, what is this, year 2, 3 under 2?
This is year 3 under Sean Payton,
Sean
but
Payton.
year two for
Bo Nix. Yeah, year 2 with Bo Nix, but year 3 for that team with Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton finally has a team that is built in his image. And I think he's just ready to cut loose over there. And I also think that, Kansas City is kind of vulnerable right now. You've got Rashee Rice that has the suspension. Travis Kelce is hit the nuclear option on his retirement plan. So I think he's playing his farewell season. Patrick Mahomes will always be Patrick Mahomes, but I don't know if they've done enough to address that offensive line long term. Kansas City's going to be good. Patrick Mahomes is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid's going to be good, but I just think finally they have some real competition in that division that just through the attrition there, they'll edge it out barely, but I would not be surprised if the Broncos took number 1. But for right now, I'm going to go Kansas City.
Yeah, I think that's a fair perspective. I agree with you on the bottom of that division. Almost the exact same reasons. I got the Raiders in last place, and not because I don't believe in Gino, or I don't believe in Max Crosby, or I don't believe in Pete Carroll. It's just they had to do a whole cultural reset because of what's been happening there the last few years. And I think Pete Carroll is a phenomenal person to do that. I just think it's going to take more than a year for them to be as competitive as they can be. But Gino is a top 10 quarterback, top 12 quarterback. He's closer to 12 than 7, but he has shown to be able to. That'll be the best quarterback play they've had in some time there. I think better than Derek Carr, honestly. Like Geno Smith has a baller, and we'll see how Ashton Jinty does. I find him. I'm going to think that he's going to struggle a little bit because the line they have, Colton Miller is a piece. But outside of him, their line still needs some help, and they drafted some people. They did a few things I did like there, but we'll have to see how those pieces develop. The Chargers, I do have third, and for some of the reasons you said, in addition to losing Rashawn Slater, and I think they'll be solid on the line because Joe Alt can move to left tackle. Mekhi Becton could possibly move to right tackle. we'll see how that works out, but that's going to leave some other areas thin is the whole point. They're going to be thin on spots in their line for a team that wants to play physical. Aside from that, Lad McConkey's an absolute beast. He came out last year and balled out, but the fact that you had to get Keenan Allen back because of how your receiver room looked, not Mike Williams, but the Mike Williams clone that they drafted that hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
A couple years back. I'm just having a brain fart,
but that should, by the way, that should tell you what we think of him, because the fact that we can't remember his name should tell you everything that you need to know about the quality of play.
And I'm going to look up his name because I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think Trey Harris drafting him will be good.
Jack going to be a dog.
I think those are good pieces, but they're young, right? So I think behind the line that'll be struggling potentially. And they have Amarian Hampton, they have Najee Harris, right? They signed Najee Harris, Mr. July, 4th of July himself, which is crazy from Will Compton. I think they'll be competitive, but I think they're going to lose some games that they wouldn't have otherwise if they had some of those injuries.
Quentin Johnson.
Thank you.
Quentin Johnson.
And then second in the division, I believe it's going to be the Chiefs. And the reason I say that is not because I'm a homer, because I'm a Broncos fan. And it's not all just, hey, I think it's going to be absolutely competitive. I think maybe a 1 game difference, half a game difference, whatever the case may be. But the Rashee Rice suspension affected their team mightily. When Rashee Rice was injured last year, it affected their team mightily. So it's not only that, but Jalen Royals is hurt, right? They drafted Jalen Royals, who I think is the best yard after catch receiver in this previous draft. He's going to be staying home. He's not going to Brazil, right? So you're going to be without Rashee Rice. You're going to be without him. Travis Kelce has absolutely lost a step. We saw that last year. First year, he didn't get to 1,000 yards for quite some time. So they have Xavier Worthy, who's an absolute dynamic receiver, but that's about it until Rashee Rice gets back and Jalen Royals gets healthy. And I think the beginning of the season, they have a tough schedule, and that not having their receiving core together is going to be the thing that kind of upsets the division a little bit. I would pick them if all those guys were healthy over the Broncos, if they didn't have those suspensions, etc. We've heard nothing but positive things from Josh Simmons out of Ohio State. He came back healthy. He's been absolutely dominating, they say, at the tackle position. So I think they fixed their line to an extent, but we'll kind of have to see how that plays out. And they do have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, which is probably the best coach-quarterback combination. But I do have the Broncos winning, and here's why, right? The receiving room we have is completely underrated, right? Adding Evan Ingram, we haven't had a tight end that's been competent in our offense since we had Julian Thomas with Peyton Manning, right? Evan Ingram is a weapon. Even if he's not healthy the whole year because he hasn't been healthy a lot, that a tight end is a quarterback's best friend, and having a young quarterback like Bo Nix, having a tight end like that, we saw some of the plays that he made during the preseason against the preseason, but you can tell there's a connection there. Cortland Sutton, I'm expecting a big jump from Troy Franklin, adding J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey to a top 3 offensive line is one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. And then what we did on defense, right? Dre Greenlaw, Talua Hufanga, drafting Jahdae Barron, which I didn't think made any sense, paying Nick Bonito today, as a matter of fact. Like, we have our defense is going to be phenomenal. And I think that's going to be the difference, where our defense is pretty much all coming back, minus having Dre Greenlaw there now. We're bringing back Alex Singleton, who was hurt last year, who's had over 100 tackles every year that he's been healthy, over 115 tackles actually. So I think we're going to edge out the division. I could see it going either way, though, like a game swing potentially either way, and I could be wrong by a game or something. But I just think that those early losses for the Chiefs could be the difference in them winning the division or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be competitive. Should be highly entertaining, man. NFC North, man. It's to you.
Yeah, so the NFC North, I think it's going to be a phenomenal division. I think it's going to be a lot of – I think this is probably, honestly, the second most competitive division in the NFL this year, potentially. But at the bottom of that division, which has been very difficult because we've been talking about it, I think it's going to be the Bears, right? And not because I don't believe in Ben Johnson. I just think it's going to take a little bit for Caleb Williams to catch up. I think their offense was so incompetent last year under Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator, the defensive coach, that essentially Caleb's going through his rookie year again, right? They have some good weapons. They remade their line. They got DeAndre Swift, but this is a very competitive division, right? So I find them going to make some improvement for sure. But I think just because of the division they're in, they're going to be in last place. If they were in the NFC South, they'd have a potential to win the division, I think. But they're in the NFC North, right? So third place in this division is going to be the Vikings. The Vikings won 15 games last year. They had a phenomenal year. They're bringing back a lot of good stuff on defense. And I believe personally that Kevin O'Connell, their coach, is one of the best play callers for quarterbacks. He had Daniel Jones looking good. He got
Sam Darnold
looking good and paid, right? So I think what JJ McCarthy is going to be doing in that offense will be phenomenal. The reason I have them third is obviously Jordan Addison suspension at the beginning of the year. Justin Jefferson has some soft tissue injuries that he's working his way back from, and this is going to really be his rookie year. Last year he was rehabbing, so I think because of that, they'll probably make the playoffs. This is realistic. I think this team will have 3 teams that make the playoffs out of this division. But I do believe that he'll jump ahead. Second place, this might surprise some people, but I think it's going to be the Detroit Lions this year, man. And I think because losing the offensive and defensive coordinator, they lost a good amount of staff, but they still do have Dan Campbell. They'll make the playoffs. They'll ball out. I think they're going to be competitive. They follow that. Their offense is going to still be explosive. But I think losing both those coordinators is going to affect them pretty mightily this year. I think they'll still win 10 to 12 games and make the playoffs, but I do see a slight regression for them potentially. And then the Green Bay Packers, right? As long as Jordan Love comes back healthy, we've heard nothing but phenomenal things out of one of me and your favorite receivers in this draft with Matthew Golden. Right? Added Micah Parsons to that line. So I really have them winning that. I could see them winning 13 games. There's a game difference between them and the Lions. But I think the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings all can be competing for a playoff spot. I think the Bears will be improved, but not improved enough to make the playoffs or to be competing. But that's how I have that division going.
Okay. I'll work it backwards. Division winner, Green Bay Packers, 100%. For all the reasons that you said. If Jordan Love comes back healthy, because I know he was dealing with some stuff on his throwing hand, but if he comes back healthy, and even if he doesn't remain healthy for the entirety of the season, I really liked the improvement that I saw from Malik Willis. I'm glad that they kept him in there. They don't really have to change their offense with Malik Willis there, and he gives you a little bit more mobility than what Jordan Love has. Just doesn't have the accuracy, but for the first time in what feels like forever, Green Bay has actually invested in their offensive weapons of Matthew Golden, and this guy was catching everything in his area code in the preseason, and I see no reason why that's not going to continue into the season. Add that in with Josh Jacobs returning to the Matt LaFleur system for a second season. I think the offensive line is going to be improved, and like you said, now you've added Micah Parsons on top of a defense that just really needed just another edge. Mm-hmm. They're going to be a really, really solid unit from top to bottom. I just think it's going to be too much to overcome. They will win this division handedly. I have the Detroit Lions finishing second, literally for the same reason that you said. I think the loss of 2 coordinators is going to be too much to overcome, and they'll get edged out by the Green Bay Packers. But for the bottom of the division, I'm going to go ahead and flip those 2. I'm going to flip your third and your fourth. I have the Vikings finishing last, and that breaks my heart because the Vikings are my dad's team. But I do not believe in JJ McCarthy. I have witnessed JJ McCarthy play for what felt like way too long on a very talented Michigan Wolverines team, and I don't believe that he is the kind of quarterback that can carry an NFL team the way that Kevin O'Connell needs them to carry that. I like JJ McCarthy has some talent. I don't want to undersell it and just be like, oh, he's the worst thing ever. I think he's a far cry from Daniel Jones. And I think that Kevin O'Connell is a quarterback whisperer. He's really, really good. But we're not talking about somebody who was used to, even in college, carrying the weight of the team and being the guy to pushed the team over, this is going to be the first time in his career that he's going to be called to do that role. They're not going to be a run first outfit. Kevin McConnell has never had a run first outfit. He expects his quarterback, needs his quarterback to throw that thing all over the place. I think, with the loss of Addison for the early seasons and Justin Jefferson nursing that hamstring, the soft tissue stuff, that thing, don't ever underestimate a soft tissue injury. Those things tend to linger.
They can, absolutely.
And even if he does see the field, what version are we getting of Justin Jefferson, right? Like, that is a player that you absolutely want at 110%, because he's special when he's at that level. He's great when he's not, but he's special when he's at that level. I just think for a guy that not only physically has to learn to trust himself, but mentally has to get his confidence back, because it's well documented that he was struggling being sidelined last year due to the injury and seeing the success of Sam Darnold. I just think there's a lot behind the scenes for him to overcome. And I think ultimately that's going to be the downfall of the Minnesota Vikings this year.
Yeah. And I'll say one last thing on this, and then we'll obviously shift divisions. But I believe in J.J. McCarthy more than you. He won y'all a national championship at Michigan. But I think Jim Harbaugh, just because
he didn't won a championship, sir.
Hey, but this is what I'm saying. I think just because he wasn't asked to do the things doesn't mean he can't do the things, right? Like Justin Herbert looked good last year, but he didn't look as good last year as he looked under Brandon Staley, because Brandon Staley asked him to do more, aired it out more. Now I believe Jim Harbaugh's culture is more of a winning culture than Brandon Staley, obviously, right? That's not even another question. But I think J.J. McCarthy has a strong arm. He's accurate. He's on time. He gets through his progressions. I think we'll see you be surprised by what he does. I just believe in him a little bit more.
Hey, listen, I hope for my dad's sake that I'm surprised and that he does well. I'm not actively rooting against the kid. I just don't believe in him. Until he gives me reason to believe, I don't.
That's fine.
Spinning down to the NFC South, man, like I'm just going to start this one from top to bottom as well. The NFC South, it's Tampa's world. It's Tampa's world. Yes, they lost Liam Cohen to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I really like what Baker has done in this second act of his career. I think he's proven that he is the franchise quarterback that we thought he could be. Maybe not to the level, but I don't have doubts about Baker Mayfield as a franchise quarterback. Does that make sense?
100%.
Like, I would never say like he's in that elite tier, but he gives me Tim Tebow vibes in the best way. And what I mean by that is when Tim Tebow was on the field, whether it was at Florida or whether it was in Denver, I promise you there was not another person on the field that wanted to win the game more than Tim Tebow. And that is the way that I feel about Baker Mayfield. There is not another competitor on that field that wants to win more than Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield actually has the tools and the capabilities to do that. So I love what Todd Bowles has built down there, what he's continued to restructure. I think they're getting some people back healthy. Chris Godwin's going to be healthy. Mike Evans is going to do Mike Evans things. But, bro, they went and got Emeka Egbuka from freaking Ohio State, who
I'm going to talk about that for sure.
Is going to be an absolute dog in this offense. They suffered a lot of injuries last year along their offensive line. And so them getting some people back healthy and then, going to the draft to address some of those needs as well. I really think Tampa just continues to build on what they're going to do. I think this will be a much more competitive division than what it has been in years past, but I still think this is Tampa's division to lose. Following right behind them, I've got the Atlanta Falcons. Unlike J.J. McCarthy, I believe in Michael Penix. And you'll say, well, you didn't even see a lot from Michael Penix. Listen, I've seen Michael Penix throw the ball in college, and he was good there. And I've seen him throw the ball in the NFL, and he was really good there. And I think with them making the decisive move to run with Michael Penix, he's got a full offseason running with the ones, right? This will be year 2 in the system for him. I really love the idea of him quarterbacking this Atlanta Falcons team and making them a lot more explosive than probably what we've been used to seeing. Will this be the year that Kyle Pitts becomes the player that everybody's been hoping that he would be since he came into the league? Is this the year that if you took him in fantasy, you won't regret it? Who knows? I'm not going to go that far. But I love what Atlanta's building down there. For third place, I have the Carolina Panthers. If Bryce Young, again, this is another situation where if he continues on the trajectory that he ended last season with, I think vastly improved. He's finally proven that he can be a quarterback. They're getting some weapons in there for him. They're building a defense around him. I think Carolina is taking a step forward. Not good enough to compete for a playoff spot, but they're in that third spot. And then the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are reverting back to the Aints. They ain't got it. Starting quarterback, they ain't got it. Weapons, they ain't really got it. Defense, outside of,
Cam Jordan,
they ain't got it. So say what Kellen Moore as the head coach, we'll see what he does. He's been a pretty successful offensive coordinator everywhere that he's gone, whether it's been with the Chargers, whether it's been with the Cowboys, whether it's been with the Eagles. Like, he's had success in those arenas. Will he have that same level of success as a head coach? Maybe, but I think that's also kind of hard to do when you don't have a quarterback. And if we're talking about quarterbacks that I don't believe in, a quarterback that I don't believe in more than I don't believe in J.J. McCarthy is Spencer Rattler.
Tyler Shuck or whatever. So, no, I agree. And I think, honestly, you talked me kind of off of a ledge a little bit, and I'll tell you about that. So I think the Saints obviously are going to be last, no question. If they're not last, then Kellen Moore deserves Coach of the Year, even if they win third place by one game. They have Alvin Kamara, they have Cam Jordan, they have Shaheed. But other than that, their team is missing a lot. They're leaving a lot to be desired. Third place, and I think barely, is going to be the Panthers. Like, I can really see the Panthers overtaking the Falcons this year if Bryce Young continues to play like how he played at the end of the year. We'll see about Ted McMillan. I think he's a good physical receiver. He's a gritty possession catch type receiver if he was a guy in college football 26. But I think we'll have to see how that goes. I think Andy Dalton being that backup there to help mentor him is a good thing. We saw how that helped out. But I think they're going to be significantly improved. Their culture's already shifted. The concern I have with the Panthers is potentially their ownership getting in the way. He stayed out the way last year. They made improvements. But how long is that going to happen, right? Second place, I have the Falcons. I agree with everything you said about Michael Penix. The worries I have for this team is, do they have enough weapons? They have Bijan Robinson, obviously, who's a dog. I'm not as big of a Drake London believer as a lot of other people are. I think he would be a great number 2 receiver, a good high upside number 2 receiver. But having him as your number 1 receiver, I think is going to, I don't think he just has it. There's something special about a number 1 receiver, have to be able to wiggle, get loose, etc. And if you look at similar receivers to him that were number 1s, like as far as size wise, you look at like Terrell Owens, Calvin Johnson, etc. He's that size, right? The difference is Calvin Johnson could get open. He didn't just use his physicality, right? Terrell Owens is one of the best route winners, most physical receivers, fast, all that. Drake London doesn't always have that. A lot of his catches look a little more difficult than they need to. So having him as a number 1 receiver, I still don't love, but I think that's going to hold their offense back a little bit. And then first place, the Buccaneers. I honestly think Emeka Egbuka will be in conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Chris Godwin will be out, I believe, or, be coming back from the injury for a little bit. And Mike Evans, while he's still a Hall of Fame receiver, he is losing a step. He's physical. He can still make plays happen. But I think Emeka Egbuka, especially at the beginning of the year, is going to be able to take advantage of some matchups that maybe he otherwise wouldn't. People are going to be focused on Mike Evans. They're going to be focused on Chris Godwin. I think that's going to allow him to just get busy, and that's not somebody. So think about all the receivers leave Ohio State. They're like really Ohio. They're really wide receiver university. He's the all-time leading receiver to leave Ohio State, and Emeka Egbuka is. So he's obviously savvy. He knows how to get open. He has great hands. I think he's going to be phenomenal for them, and I think that was a steal of a draft pick for them.
Yeah. All right, man. NFC East time.
Yeah, NFC East. So in last place in this division, and I think this is going to be another very competitive division overall, but last place I think will be the Cowboys, right? And it's not because I'm being a hater because of Micah Parsons and all this other stuff. I think their offense with George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Dak, I think will be good. I hope that they can get something out of Javonte Williams. He's a phenomenal pass blocking running back, but that's not why you have a running back start for you. I hope he can recapture that form before he got injured. But they have some injuries on their offensive line. Their defense, I have a lot of questions about. I just don't think that team in this division and how late they drag things on culturally is going to set them up to win. I think Jerry Jones is really holding them back. I'm picking them last, right? I think the Giants are going to edge them out, and here's why. That defensive line they have, that front seven they have, might be the best front seven in the NFL, right? You look at Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter. Shoot, I'm like having a brain fart, bro. But they got
What's his name? From Oregon. Kayvon Thibodeau.
Kayvon Thibodeau. Thank you. That's who I was like. They have weapons. They have elite edge rushers, and they have waves of that, right? Like they're really reminiscent to the Broncos, the Eagles, et cetera, in that regard. And I think that can win you games, especially with like a Russell Wilson.
Oh, dude, Brian Burns.
And Brian Burns, right? Like we're bugging. So you have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, Dexter Lawrence. So like that right there is enough that I think they can still use 3 to 4 games, right? Russ can throw a phenomenal moon ball. They have one of the best receivers in the NFL right now. Again, he's young. They have one of the best receivers in the NFL right now, and deep balls is something that he can go up and get. And so I'm finished. I have them going to take third. The Commanders, I'm having finishing second and obviously making the playoffs. I think that offense, coming back to that offense with Cliff Kingsbury, who I thought was going to leave them. Dan Quinn is a phenomenal culture setter. He showed to be that. And Jaden Daniels to take another leap. The thing that I think is going to prevent them a little bit from taking the leap that we can is the age of their roster, right? Their roster is a little bit older. Deebo Samuels, while he is a weapon, he's had a lot of injuries as well, and I'm glad they played Terry McLaurin, but Terry McLaurin sat out most of the offseason. So how long is it going to take him to ramp back up, especially with the offense that runs really fast, and hoping that he doesn't get any kind of soft tissue injuries that we see happen a lot to receivers and corners, et cetera, for sitting out for a while. And then obviously the Eagles, right? Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, like Saquon Barkley, right? Zach Ertz, like they have weapons. They have the best offensive line. They have Vic Fangio calling that defense. I'm expecting them. They draft exactly how a team should draft. Hey, we know we're going to have to pay this player in 2 years, so we're going to draft this guy, develop him for the year. The secondary is going to take over. That's been working for them seamlessly. Cooper DeJean's a monster. Quinton Mitchell's a monster. I think they have a team, and I think they're going to be competing for a Super Bowl again this year potentially.
But Jahad Campbell, bro,
and adding Jahad Campbell, which I don't understand how the NFL keeps letting Harry Roseman do this stuff. But that defense is going to be absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be a real nasty defense. So I got the Eagles winning that division by a few games.
Yeah. Eagles winning that division for me. No surprise there for all the reasons that you said. It's too much for anybody to overwhelm. Second place, I've got the Commanders coming in second. And by the way, I have them coming in second just barely because I think the team that is going to challenge them for second place is going to be the New York Giants. I really like what I've seen in the preseason from the New York Giants. I like all the moves that they made in this offseason. Like you said, that defensive front is going to be nasty. It's going to be aggressive. And you're talking about, a place where the Commanders being a team that still has some issues along their offensive line that they need to address. Terry McLaurin sitting out the offseason and him ramping back up. Deebo Samuel has degraded every single year. So you don't know what version of him you're getting. Sure, you've added Von Miller, but like Von Miller has not been the same since his last Super Bowl. And then, you have Mr. Iron Man himself, Bobby Wagner, who just doesn't seem to age at all. He just stays level. How many more years are you going to have him? And outside of that, like somebody needs to point to me, like, what are the things on the Commanders defense that I should be terrified of? Like, it's just not there. And I think it's dangerous to put everything on to Jaden Daniels' back. I think he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback in the NFL for a long time, but I think you're going to have to get him a lot more help and supporting cast on the defense for them to really go toe-to-toe with a stacked Eagles roster. But I have them just barely edging out the Giants because the Giants have to get settled under center. And while I do like Russ under center, I was really pleased with the stuff that I saw from Jackson Dart. And I think they might have a problem over there The moment that Russ starts messing up, bro, like the fans are going to be calling for Dart. And then last, I had the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones continues to run that franchise in the ground, and I'm in love with it. I hope this trade with Micah Parsons buys him another 50 years of life. But like, there's questions all around this team. Like, what are we doing defensively? Mozzie Smith didn't show up the way that they thought he was going to show up the other year. Yeah, you're going to partner him with Kenny Clark, great, but now you don't have really anything coming off the edge. They signed DeRon Bland for a lot of money. They re-signed him, and I like DeRon Bland. I think he's good, but you got Trayvon Diggs coming back off an injury. Is he going to be the same person that he was prior to the injury? And even when he was, like, sure, he's great at taking the ball away, but if he wasn't taking the ball away, he was giving up yards, maybe. Like, he was giving up yards.
And not to mention, like, Michael Parsons was his best friend.
Yeah.
On the roster. Like, that's going to affect you mentally for sure.
And the chemistry is there. The offensive line, don't get me started on the offensive line. I think where once upon a time the offensive line used to be the strength of the Dallas Cowboys, I would argue it's one of their biggest weaknesses right now. Whether people can't stay healthy, people are getting too old and they just done aged out, they've been retired, whatever, you name it, right? Like, the offensive line is nothing that a quarterback should feel comfortable behind, especially one that has had the injury history of Dak Prescott, who is himself coming back from another injury. And Dak Prescott, like, regardless of what you think about him as a human being, he is the poster boy for empty calories. Like, all of the stats that he have either come in games where they're blowing the opponent out, or it's in garbage time where the outcome has been decided in the second or third quarter. So and mix that with the fact that, like, yes, I know Schottenheimer shares family lineage of historical coaches and stuff like that. There's a reason why this is his first head coaching opportunity. There are 31 other teams in the NFL that would have never given him a head coaching job. I don't think he's a head coach in the NFL, and we know that Jerry loves keeping people in-house and hiring people that he thinks that he can control and have influence and that will continue to do things his way. So I think for that reason, like, Schottenheimer, in any other organization, I would say he's one and done. But because he's probably going to dance the way that Jerry wants him to dance, he'll buy himself at least a second year there. But yeah, the Cowboys are going to be a mess this year. They're going to finish last in that division.
Yeah, no. So I think the reason Shotty wasn't a coach earlier is because he was a very hot name offensive coordinator and decided not to take the jobs at that time. And then sometimes when you pass an opportunity by, it takes a long time. So hearing from people that he's coached, he's a phenomenal coach. He's a leader of men. He's a player's coach, etc. But I just think that they don't have all the pieces they need for his offense to be successful.
Yeah. Well, don't worry. Jerry will give him more time.
Yeah.
NFC West. This is the part where I get to be a homer. The winners of this division will be the Los Angeles Rams. One, because I'm a homer and I just believe wholeheartedly in my team. But two, because I really think in terms of complete rosters this year, I think the Rams are one of the more complete rosters in that division. There was a lot of, speculation around Matthew Stafford. It appears like, we're out of that danger zone, but it will be something that we'll have to monitor for the remainder of the season. But we saw what the Rams did. They got off to a slow start the past 2 seasons and back-to-back years. For whatever reason, right? Like, they've gotten off to slow starts. But despite all of that, they've been able to make playoff runs. And they've been competitive in those playoff appearances. Like, it literally came down to a one-play difference in both playoff losses the previous 2 years against the Lions and the Eagles.
Right.
I think this version of the offensive line is probably one of the best versions of the offensive line that the Rams have had. And for the first time in 3 years, everybody on this offensive line is healthy and will be starting the season. Alaric Jackson will be good to go. Steve Avila, I think, is one of the best young guards in the league. You had Bo Limmer, that was the center last year, but they brought back Coleman Shelton, who played an incredible amount of center for them during their championship run. And he has familiarity with the system. He has familiarity with Matthew Stafford. I think Kevin Dotson has obviously turned his career around since his days in Pittsburgh, moving back to his natural position at right guard. And then you got the long tenured veteran and Rob Havenstein, who he's not one of the best right tackles in the league, but he's a steady presence over there. But I think the thing that we can get most excited about, Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams signed his extension, and you partner him with Blake Corum and Jaquiz Hunter from Auburn, not to mention, as much as I'm going to miss Cooper Kupp, if you had to replace Cooper Kupp with somebody, Devontae Adams is an absolute demon. Puka Nacua continues to ascend, and you bring in Tutu Atwell. And I like the fact that they went out and got aggressive at tight end. Tyler Higbee being healthy at the start of the season, we saw what impact he had when he was finally able to enter the season last year. Just the massive boost to the locker room of having him on the sidelines and actually, dressed and stuff did for that team. I think Tyler Ferguson is going to be a very welcome addition to that. But that young defense, this is going to be year 2. They're going to be ascending. Jarrett Verse is going to continue to be an absolute demon. Kobe Turner has already proven that he is a problem on the inside. You mix that with Byron Young on the outside, who had it himself a year. Braden Fisk, who was in the Rookie of the Year conversation, who some would argue should have got it over Braden Fisk. But not only that, you fixed one of the biggest needs that the Rams had on their defense last year, which was their run-stopping capability by adding Poona Ford right there in the middle. Poona Ford has been a bona fide run stopper in all of his stops, right? When he's been in Seattle, when he's been with the Chargers, he is a force, and he can also rush the passer. Not to mention, they shored up the linebacker position, adding Nate Landman in there, and Omar Speights in year 2. Now, some would argue that the secondary is still going to be the big question mark on this team. And to that, I would say, yeah, I agree with you. But I like what we have in Darius Williams. Akello Witherspoon showed that he is good enough to be a CB2 or a low-end CB1. Can they get Emmanuel Forbes to be, to live up to his draft stock? Because he's still on this roster. And if he can live up to his draft stock, that's going to be dangerous. Love what they have in the safety room with Cam Curl and your boy Cam Kinchins, who came out and showcased his abilities and flash last year. So I think this is a young team on the defense, and they're still relatively young on offense outside of, quarterback Devontae and right tackle. Like, they're a really young team, and I think they're an ascending young team. And whenever you've got Matt Stafford under center and Sean McVay on the sidelines, I think that's a recipe for success. Second place in this division, I'm going to have the 49ers. I think the 49ers are going to be much improved from what people think that they're going to be, because I think you can't undersell Robert Saleh coming back to that team. He's going to get that defense right, regardless of all the departures and stuff that they've had. And I know they've got questions on offense at receiver, because it seems like either nobody's healthy or nobody's there. But offensive line should be decent. Fred Warner, as long as he's on that defense, that defense is going to play. And like I said, Kyle Shanahan, love him or hate him, he knows how to call it. He knows how to call offense. Like, he knows how to call offense. He knows how to coach. Third place I have is the Seahawks coming in there. Sam Darnold isn't going to find the same success that he found in Minnesota. I just don't believe that. But I think that Seahawks team defensively, that defense is going to be enough to carry them to a third place finish. And then the Arizona Cardinals, I have them finishing last, even though, I think they take another step forward under Jonathan Gannon. I am not sold on Kyler Murray. He is an absolute talent, but he just has not lived up to the expectations that they have for him. And then, defensively, they've already started losing some pieces on defense that are going to, create question marks all over the place for them. So it's another thing where I think them in Seattle will be pushing for that third place, but I have them finishing last.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So I have the Cardinals finishing last as well. All the reasons you named, except for I believe in Kyler. He's a playmaker. I just feel like they had to have a little bit of a more structured offense for him to be out of. But I think they have the coach to be able to do that. I have in third place the 49ers, and this is why, right? Like, I trust their coach is Kyle Shanahan's one of my favorite coaches in the NFL. And obviously Robert Saleh back on that defense is a phenomenal thing. Here's the thing. They lost a lot of pieces on defense. We don't know what Christian McCaffrey's going to look back like on offense, and we saw what their offense looked like without him last year. I think Brock Purdy is a dog. I think he's a phenomenal quarterback, but Brandon Ayuk's not going to be back right away. Juan Jennings has been in and out of the lineup, so they gave him a little bit of a pay bump from $7 million, added $3+ million of incentives to his contract. So that's like, hey, I think he can go get that. That's a good thing. I think he'll produce, but when will he be back 100%? So that there's a lot of question marks on their defense, in my opinion, and on that team that kind of make me think that they could take a third place finish. I wouldn't be surprised if they take second place by any stretch, but I could honestly see them fall into third place. I think the Seahawks will be in second place and make the playoffs, right? And the reason I do believe that is Sam Darnold, Cooper Kupp. Now, while the Cooper Kupp is, on the tail end of his career, he still knows how to get open, right? Mm-hmm. He's a guy 7-on-7 receiver. He's going to get open. I feel like they added Elijah Royal from the U to the tight end room. He's a playmaker on offense. Their offensive line right now is arguably better besides Trent Williams than the Niners, right? They have one of the better offensive lines, and they have a defensive coach who was their head coach was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. Absolutely balled out there. Their defense will be tough. They have a young defense, and I think they're going to grow. I think as long as Sam Darnold doesn't have a lot of turnovers, they're going to be running the ball. I think they'll be in good shape with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And then obviously I have the Rams. Now, I think this division can be close, but here's the concerns I have with the Rams, right? Their team is built in a way that they should absolutely be running the ball, right? Matt Stafford has he has his back. He's, last probably 2-3 years of his, probably last 2 years, 1 to 2 years of his career. And I don't want them to put him in a position where he has to go win games until it's time for him that he has to go win games. So I hope with that running back room that they have, because they have a deep running back room, DeQuez Hunter, Blake Corum and Kyron Williams, like that. If they run the ball and kind of keep Matt Stafford healthy, I think they could run away with his division. But I think it's going to be kind of tempting when you have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams to kind of throw it out and sometimes put Matt Stafford at risk, because we know he likes to stare down the barrel of the gun, hold the ball till last minute. He was going to take some hits, and I just hope that's not going to mess them up. And then the other concern I have with the Rams is their corners, right? Now, here's the thing. The corners aren't going to have to cover that long because they're front seven they have, and the safeties they have are going to be able to make up for a lot of the mistakes that the secondary can have. Cam Kitchens, I believe, is going to be a top 5 safety in the league very shortly. And yes, I'm biased. I'm a U fan, but I think you called me and said, hey, what about Cam Kitchens when they drafted him? And I said, yo, he's a dog, bro. I don't understand how he fell that far. And then after his first 2 games, you were like, bro, we got one. And I was like, absolutely, right? So I think he is going to be able to make up for a lot of things. He's an absolute playmaker. He's a ball hawk. And that's something that if you're a ball hawk in college, generally that follows you to the NFL. That's followed him to the NFL. And I could see him having 7 interceptions or so this year. So the weaknesses they have, again, some of that age at certain spots, right? Like Havenstein, I think, is going to last the whole season. They don't got a lot of depth behind him. Their linebacker spot, while they did add some things, we'll have to see how they play throughout the whole year. Omar Spikes has to take a big jump for him to be like the guy and take control of that position. But I feel like with that being said, they have arguably the best play caller in the NFL, and Sean McVay. They have a defense that has playmakers on it. And I personally believe that my defensive player of the year pick this year is going to be Jared Verse. I think he's going to take a big jump. And you know why? Because of that one workout with Aaron Donald, right? Aaron Donald worked out with him one time, and I think his mentality and how much he talks, and he has a relentless motor, I think he's honestly going to be in contention for that defensive player of the year. And if he does do that with the other pieces that they have on that line, that front seven, that's going to put them in a phenomenal position. But the key for them is to run the ball, keep Matt Stafford healthy into the playoffs.
Yeah, trust me, there's a lot of screaming that's going to happen in my house. Most of what you're going to hear is going to be run the damn ball, McVay. Like, that's been the mantra really for years. That goes back to the Todd Gurley days. Run the damn ball, McVay. Finally, man, to close out the show, we got football tonight. We got real deal football where the outcome matters. This matters. This isn't preseason. This isn't Hall of Fame. This is for all the chips, okay? Well, at least some of the chips. Heated rivalry: Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles. Um, like, let's give our predictions. I'm pretty sure if you guys have been paying attention to the top of the show where we think the division is going to finish, like, you guys pretty much know where me and Mike are going to fall on this one, unless Mike decides to really surprise me and jump out of a window here. But I've got the Eagles destroying the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been largely unsettled this entire offseason. A lot of it due to those contract negotiations with Micah Parsons and just Jerry just loving himself a little bit too much. I don't think they're ready to play football. I don't think they're ready to play football. New coach regime, all of that stuff. And yes, I get it. Schottenheimer was in house, so you're like, oh, it's not going to be that much has changed. It's a new voice. It's a new crew. Yeah, it's going to change. You're missing a lot of people. You're missing a lot of talent. They're getting people back off of injury. Where Philadelphia, somebody tell me where they got worse. Somebody do it. Somebody find it and tell me where they got worse. Because
they got Jahad Campbell, bro.
Yeah. I don't think they got worse. The offensive line is going to do what the offensive line does. Jalen Hurts doesn't have to be in midseason form because Saquon is going to be in midseason form from the whistle. That defense is going to be hunting, and they know they have Dallas on their back foot. And like I said, there's no love lost between those two teams anyway. If you can't get up for a rivalry game, especially when you know your rival is already they already have one leg in the grave. Like, yeah, this is the stuff that you should be living for because you want to bury them early and make sure that they know, hey, it's going to be a long season. And the Eagles have a chance to come out and make a statement, not only to their division, but to the rest of the NFL tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking up the point spread. The Eagles are 8.5-point favorites, which starting the game off by more than touchdown favorites is absolutely insane, especially on a Thursday night. But I expect them to beat the Cowboys by probably 14 points. I think it'll be more than that 8.5. They're going to more than cover that. In my opinion, that's one of the easier bets for me to make this year. Is that I don't believe that Saquon will play in the fourth quarter because they'll be up by so much that he'll be chilling and letting them young boys run. So I think that the Eagles run away with this game. It's banner night for them. And while Sirianni like to act like he didn't know it's banner night, we didn't even know that. He knows it's banner night.
He knows it's banner night.
His player knows it's banner night, but most importantly, their fans know it's banner night, right? So
that's for sure.
They're in Philadelphia on the Thursday night, losing Saquon. And I don't know if you read this, but the Eagles, it came out a report today that the Eagles made a trade offer for Micah, right? They're always on the line. I don't know what the trade offer was, but that lets you know that team was always trying to get better. And obviously Jerry Jones, if he would have been an idiot and traded him in division, I would have had way worse things to say about him. But the fact that they're always on the hunt for players, they have a young team that's getting better. They have the best offensive line until somebody snatches that mantle from them. They still got the tush push. And then Jerry Jones said, hey, we got to be able to stop the run. You're going up against the best running offense in the NFL last year. And in the area that you said you guys don't do well, and I don't believe that one player you traded for, Grant or Clark, is gonna change that, right? So I have them running away with this game. I think it's going to be a beat down, and hopefully it doesn't hurt the pride too much of the Cowboys and the Cowboys fans. But Jerry's set y'all up for this.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too sad if it did hurt their pride. I think one thing that most Cowboys fans could practice more of is humility.
That's hilarious.
That's just the way I feel. I feel like, you guys talk really loud for a team that I have to break out the VCR to watch your last championship on. Some of you kids don't even know what a VCR is. But anyway, we're excited. Football is officially back. Want to take time to thank all of you guys for tuning in to a special Thursday edition of In the Pocket Podcast. Now that we're in the season, you can expect your In the Pocket to drop every single Monday, where we're going to be recapping what happens on Sunday and getting up to our normal shenanigans and probably fighting with each other over what we think should have or didn't happen or some kind of crazy call. But you can catch us right here every single Monday on YouTube. Do us a favor. If you like the content, share the content with a friend, with your mom, with your uncle, with your cousin, with your brother, with your auntie, all of them. Go ahead, hit the thumbs up button, and go ahead and hit the bell for notifications so that way you guys won't miss out on a single episode. So we will see you guys on Monday.